Meeting to order. Do we want to go around and introduce ourselves since we have new members? I'm Stephen Flanagan. I'm the neutral member of the Toxics Board.
I'm Rick Nickel. I'm an advocate, right?
Industry.
Industry, okay. I'm not here very often, so it's hard for me.
Hi, I'm Mary Feldman. I'm doing your minutes today.
I'm Bo Don, also a minutes taker.
I'm Christine Ziller-Powell, Right to Know Advocate.
I'm Randy Pritz, Right to Know Advocate.
Joe Epley, staff.
Sheena Gardner, industry rep on my Valley Company.
And Wendy Cecil, industry rep from Life Technologies.
Gentlemen?
I'm Andy Pointer, Environmental Pointers.
Ken Luce, public.
Ben Sappington, Eugene Chamber of Commerce.
I represent Western Pneumatics, by the way.
Okay, so next on the agenda would be public comment. Do you have anything from public members?
Yeah, I'm a public and I'm going to comment. Since I don't get to talk during your deliberations about how to reduce costs, I'm going to tell you that I've been a part of this whole process for 15 years, since its inception in 1996 and promulgation in 1997. And the world has changed since that time. And there was nothing in the charter that said it will be posted on the net. It said in the charter that the repository would be kept in the public library, accessible to the Eugene citizens. There's nothing about being on the internet. Granted, the internet was a little bit new at that time. But part of your cost of this program is your IT cost associated with being on the internet. Now, if you had a hard copy, or 2 or 5, or however many, and you posted them at the library, then they would be accessible by the Eugene public. They could go in, they could prove that they were a Eugene resident. You wouldn't have the issue of the world accessing your database and looking for hotspots where to place a bomb. We didn't have the terrorist activity 15 years ago that we do now. So you remove the website, you put it at the public library, it allows you to track who looks at it, they can sign in for it, prove that they're a resident of Eugene, and that's what the charter says, posted in the library. There's nothing that says it has to be on the net. If you do those things, then the Department of Homeland Security isn't going to come in and shut you down. Because I can almost assure that if somebody tells the Department of Homeland Security that this is a way for terrorists to pinpoint areas in Eugene with explosive materials, DHS will shut you down in a heartbeat. So I just say that's a good way to reduce your costs. Reduce your IT costs. It's going to reduce your overall costs. You're going to be able to manipulate your budget. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Have we seen those kind of threats with the EPA reports that are posted online?
I don't know.
What was your question?
I was wondering if we have seen evidence of those kind of threats with the similar reports that are posted online through the EPA.
Well, along with that, how many people actually access the website?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested in knowing that out of the population of Eugene.
I know the fire marshal has limited access to his website.
Can you describe how that works?
No, I don't know how it works.
And Fire Marshal?
Yeah.
They give you they check you out, do a background check, give you a password and username. And that way you can go on and look at their database, although they still won't tell you in that database where things are. They just say at this address they have 10 tons of dynamite and fertilizers and oxidizers and things like that.
Are there any restrictions other than
They're-
felonies for?
Oh, actually, yeah, that's why they do a background check. They don't give that information out freely.
But I mean,
You know that they have a community right to know program, but you can't see their database without their permission.
so basically the presumption is that you can see see it unless there's some reason why it would seem unwise, like.
No, they won't let you see it at all unless they give you permission to access their database.
I'm saying the permission.
Yeah.
Like when I filed Freedom of Information Act with Army Corps of Engineers to see about the safety of our dams, seismic safety that threatened Eugene, I had to show a reason that, you know, and it was connected to the siting of critical facilities. They didn't just say, well, as long as you're not a criminal that plans to, that obviously wants to blow up. They said, no, we need a reason. So what I'm asking about the fire marshal is, are they just saying you have to meet some reason, or are they just saying, as long as there's nothing, no red flags, we will show you? Do you know?
No, I mean, call them out. Like I said, I would argue they probably would presume that you have a reason to look at it.
There's some kind of vetting process that they must go through.
Yeah. So if you work for this company, they already knew me as a consultant, I already worked with all these companies, that would make sense, I'd want to see this data. So I do reporting for them, et cetera. If they didn't know who I was and didn't understand any reason I might need that, then they might question that.
I think they do question
Yeah.
what's your
Yeah,
basic
so,
reason.
so they want it. In other words, the presumption isn't you can see it unless there's reason. They just say, well,
What do you have to?
we need to know why you want to see
Yeah.
it. That's what they're saying. Okay. Just curious.
Okay, any other public comments?
Actually, a couple things, because it relates to, again, the main reason we're here. Your funding issues are obviously a dilemma. We've watched the rates per employee go up from what was tens of dollars to now $82, right? Isn't that the current number? And because people cap out at 2,024 employees, the only way I see your avenue is keep jacking up the FTE per employee and the amount that you pay. But then along with that, what I'm struggling with is we've got, and this is the last count I had, 31 reporting, 28 reporting but not having to file the mass balance reports. How did it happen that we were able to hook in those other 28 companies who don't meet the requirements of the ordinance as having the thresholds for the chemicals? How could they even be in the program if they didn't meet the criteria for the program that's specified in the charter?
If,
10 employees, more than 220 a month, SIC goes 20 to 39.
it was a trickle-down effect from the lawsuit that was filed early in the program by
Was the
Mrs.
charter amended?
by Mrs.'s, in the way that the city council amended the Eugene code. And so the code's been updated.
So is that written somewhere?
Yep.
Because that's not in the charter.
No, we have a number of documents that kind of govern the program.
Do we have access to those on the website?
No, but I can send them to you.
Because that's kind of a mystery about how we snooker these other companies into the program that don't even meet the original criteria specified in the charter.
Well, it, again, it was trickle-down effect from the lawsuit, and we didn't snooker anybody in. It's just created a second tier of businesses that do have to pay a fee, but they don't have to report.
Don't we have trouble with calling the Toxics Board and asking for monies from companies that don't even meet the original intent of the charter?
What was the question?
I'm frustrated that we have a toxics rule and it says if you're meet these thresholds you pay, and now we've got a whole group of companies just because they're manufacturers in the city and have 10 employees that end up paying, and they wouldn't have even been considered initially because they don't meet the threshold for toxics, and that's what this board is about. It's not about going after manufacturers, it's about going after toxics. It's what I would interpret the purpose being. So I'm frustrated about these companies having to pay that don't have toxics. That just seems wrong. So that's my public comment. Thank you.
Anyone else? Public comment? Okay, so we'll move on to item number 3, approval of meeting minutes. We had 2 sets of minutes from May 8th and July 17th that were circulated by email. Are there any corrections or comments on those minutes? Can I have a motion to approve both sets of minutes, please?
Make a motion to accept the minutes as read.
Second.
And then,
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Nope. Wow, that was easy. All right, Joe, you're up to bat.
Staff reports. So since about half of you weren't here last time, I'll just make the announcement that effective July 1st, Stephen is our chair and Sheena is our vice chair. And again, the chair rotates every July 1st. So we'll just talk about the next round closer to next year. Since the last meeting, I received a call from one of the small businesses in the program expressing the usual issues with the program, that it doesn't make sense. They are especially unhappy with the payment inequity between the larger businesses and the smaller businesses. And they wanted me to let the Toxics Board know that they support any effort to eliminate them. And then also, since our last full group meeting, I sent out a number of memorandums and emails providing you with information. And I just wanted to go through the topics and then ask if anybody had any questions about any of those. So clarification on R&D reporting, which we're going to talk about today. Aurora Innovations addition to the program. Appointment of Wendy Cecil and reappointment of Christine Zeller-Powell. Invoicing process update for fiscal year 14. Updated Toxics Board roster, website analytics, which Rick, that's where you will find numbers on people that visit the website, including specifically from Eugene.
Well, it just seemed to me the last time that I was given a number out of all the people in Eugene, the amount actually visiting the website was pretty small. And there's no secret in my feeling on the whole Toxic Board program. So I'd second the phone call you got.
Well, I just wanted to remind you
Well,
that
it
I do.
would report the
Yeah.
same thing to several different agencies, you all know that.
And then memo to City Council regarding the appointment of Lisa Arkin to position 5. That will become formal and official at the council meeting on September 9th. So if everything follows through, Lisa will be joining us at the meeting after that date. I also wanted to mention that both Caitlin Grisby and Sarah Nienaber received 1 vote each from the city councilors to be appointed, but the majority of the votes were for Lisa Arkin. And then I sent a memo out regarding the global harmonization, harmonized system of classification and labeling chemicals. And Wendy has spent a number of her years at Life Technologies working on MSDSs for this project, so she knows quite a bit about it and is happy to help us all get more in-depth knowledge if we choose.
If you don't want to read the letter speeches.
Are you covering, is that coming up later in the meeting, or is this an announcement memo basically?
Oh, well, what we're gonna talk about in the meeting is that we're gonna hopefully update our hazardous substance tracking instructions to reflect the updated language of this global initiative. Any questions? That's all I sent out. All right, staff report done.
Okay, so we're on to item 5, the characteristic chemicals recommendation.
Yes.
Do you have another extra copy of the agenda?
I do. So, earlier this year, last time the whole group met, we had a couple of other folks from Life Technologies join us because they had forwarded a number of characteristic chemicals for us for consideration to addition to the list of reportable chemicals. And in discussions with Andy Pointer's assistants, we realized that a number of those were R&D substances, which under this program are not reportable. So they sent me a revised list, and those chemicals are on the May 14th memo from me to you, asking for consideration on addition to the list of reportable chemicals for the program.
And the distinction there is chemicals used for development as opposed to manufacture, right?
Right. So these chemical, the revised list includes only those for manufacturing.
Right.
So at the end of that memo, because there was a lot of information in that memo, I kind of numbered out what I need the toxics board to weigh in on.
This was the May 14th memo?
Yes.
This is the item characteristic chemicals.
Yes.
Is characteristic referred to characteristic of research and development?
No, it's those,
Characteristic.
wait, I'm sorry.
This says the characteristic word is used as far as hazardous properties. Not that it's characteristic of use in research, that it's characteristic of having hazards.
Flammable, ignitable, reactive, toxic.
Yes. So,
I'm a little confused about how.
There were good definitions. So the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, so the hazardous waste, federal hazardous waste for definitions
Okay.
of flammable, ignitable, corrosive, toxic.
Oh, wait a minute, let's see, are we on 6 or are we on 5 or 6?
We're on 5.
Okay.
And we're dealing with the memo from May 14th.
Okay.
so the first item for board consideration is to add to the list of reportable chemicals thermocell, decane, hydrochloric acid, hydrogen peroxide 30%, sodium nitrate, and sodium borohydride.
Well, we've got the definition, so.
So that would be on the list. Yes, I need more than that.
Do you need a motion for that specifically?
Or motion for all.
Make a motion to accept chemicals listed in number 1 of the memo as a part of the toxics list.
Second. Any discussion on including these? Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Looks like that's done.
Okay, so, I need direction, when posting it to the reportable chemicals list. What makes the most sense on, how to differentiate between 2 other chemicals that have similar names that are on the list already. So this is all also in the May 14th memo.
What are the other chemicals that are on the list now?
So hydrochloric acid,
It's already on the list.
yes.
So their hydrochloric acid can exist in both a gaseous and a liquid form, and they pose 2 different distinct hazards.
Because we have it on the list already as EHS in gaseous form only.
Right, so the proposal would be to add it in a liquid concentrated form, I understand.
They have different CVS numbers.
No, and that's the really difficult thing with some chemicals that can exist in multiple forms. They actually have the same CAS number, but depending on which physical form it's in, that the gaseous form is an inhalation toxin, that the liquid form, not so much, because you're not really gonna inhale it and you're not gonna do a whole lot of vapors.
Couldn't say gas.
EHS in gaseous form.
Well, but it still says hydrochloric acid and that CAS. So regardless of whether it's the EHS and gas or not, I'd argue it's already there.
Which one is it?
Well, I know, but we're adding a different component on and, just to kind of help people who are trying to report that.
If they look at hydrochloric acid, the CAS number, doesn't matter whether it's EHS or not, it's gonna be.
I know, but right now our list says EHS in gaseous form only, so we either need to take that off
Does it?
or add something in.
No, no.
This was printed in 2001, so was there an update ever that specifies gaseous form? So this is it now,
Well-
you print out.
I think if people saw, even though the CAS number is the same, but this is hydrochloric acid in gaseous form, and a separate listing in liquid form, they would say, well, there must be some reason why it's listed twice, even though the CAS is the same, and, I don't know that we would need to list the reason that it has a different properties, but.
Well, we do specify,
Well, because it's,
what type of characteristic it is.
it's also not an EHS in liquid form. So your threshold quantity is gonna be different if it's an EHS or if it's not. So if I'm reporting it, I prefer what I have to report as a liquid not be considered an EHS.
You could capitalize the word liquid or gaseous to call attention to the fact that it's, although it has the same name and gas number is handled differently in those two different forms. So it's not failed to notice.
So a separate listing would make more sense.
It's like water. We handle it differently whether it's liquid, gas, or frozen.
Your comment there about sodium nitrate is not listed where sodium nitrite is.
Sodium nitrate?
Not listed.
Right.
Sodium nitrite.
She has a
We're gonna be
proposal
adding
to
it.
add
Right,
it.
right.
Yeah, two different compounds.
Yeah,
What was that, Stephen?
They're two different things.
Yes.
but you were afraid that people might be confused because of similarity.
What was the other one that has confusion?
No, I mean, it's not confusing, it's just, if we say, if we're adding this other component in and the chemical list says report EHS in gaseous form only, that's not accurate. I don't think.
We're talking
Yeah.
about the sodium nitrate.
Oh, no, that's not
No.
in this part.
No.
Oh, okay,
The-
all right.
The two that we're looking at is
Oh,
hydrochloric acid.
well, still, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, no, I said what I thought on that.
So hydrogen peroxide, concentration more than 52% and 30% also have the same CAS number. So that would be the same, a separate listing. Would make no sense.
Would you need them listed separately? What's the purpose of reporting that separately? It's just the 30% is generally where all the hazards begin in earnest. Was there a reason that 52% was chosen originally?
Can you just say greater than 30%?
Because I would go that route.
Just do that, simplifies it.
How was it listed on the original list?
Greater than 52.
I mean, on our list, but
Excuse me?
federal
Ernie's
list.
calling you.
Federalist?
Yeah, so on
It's a lot
302.
more important than this meeting.
I don't know.
So in EMPRA, if it was greater than 52%, then we can't change that.
Again, your EHS thing
Rating.
is why. So just make it greater than 30 and, yeah.
So you make.
But it's already a listed substance with EHS circular Ricocera 302. So it doesn't even need to be a characteristic issue, it's already listed. I just say greater than 30 and anything
Yeah, then you're
Greater
covered.
52 than the EHS. Yeah.
Unless the 52% applies specifically to one of those.
EHS.
et cetera.
That's why, that greater than 52%.
I'll double check and if EMPRA specifically states above 52, I'll make two separate listings.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll just change it to 30%.
So they might be treated different by us.
And I will check that also.
Yeah, then two listings. otherwise,
Okay. So then I'm gonna take you back to last October's meeting, for which some of you were not on board. And we had, we presented to city council to remove 4 chemicals from the list. And since that time, I've done some additional research and found that 3 of those are now regulated by Clean Air Act. So the only one that does not meet the requirement to remain on the list is oxygen. So I just want to update that motion for city council.
That's funny.
To update the list of reportable chemicals to add those other 3 back in, which are acetylene, hydrogen, and propane.
you'll be presenting a motion to rescind the dropping of those 3
Essentially.
and no action on the removal of oxygen, as was done a year ago.
Correct. So it'll just be updated ordinance.
How do we get word out to those people who are now reporting oxygen?
Pardon me?
How do we get word out to those people who have been currently reporting oxygen?
They will receive it with other notes about updates to the list and the tracking instructions in January. So everybody will get the memo. So is the board okay with that?
Well, you're gonna make a motion.
I can't make a motion.
Somebody's making a motion to city council, I mean.
Yes, I will be doing the paperwork for city council.
Well, in that case, I will make a motion that we authorize the rescinding of the delisting of the 3 chemicals which need to be listed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Well, good, Randy. And then one more trip back to last October. We had, the Toxics Board had made a recommendation for the city manager, because he has the authority to add chemicals to the list. Those characteristic chemicals that were initially on the list but mistakenly deleted. And so, because we had more work to do on the chemical list, city attorney advised me to hold off on that process. So I just, to refresh your memory, sent out the list that was approved back in October. And I'll be forwarding that again this week to city manager. And he'll do his 90-day public comment period and include those in the final administrative rule. We already motion on that, you don't need a motion. Correct. I just want to see if there was any questions.
And since you mentioned administrative rule, do you happen to have handy the section of administrative rules since the past about how our fee structure is for anything for this program? For those who want to know more than what the charter.
I don't have it here with me, but yeah, I'll forward it to Andy. Anybody else that has it? Ken?
All right, yeah, sure, I'd like to know where.
Yep.
And administrative rules are posted online, same as city code.
Yeah, they're under, I think the city manager's office or something like that. It's really hard to find.
It is. Okay, well then,
And just to be more specific, it's a Eugene code that I'll be sending you. On the section that created that second tier of businesses.
okay.
Okay. I think we're done with that one.
So we're moving on to 6, the hazardous substance tracking instructions recommendations.
Yes. So again, this is to be a little bit more clear that research and development is, chemicals are not reportable. So I'd like to reference my May 16th memo, where I just put in a suggested rewrite. And then I had an afterthought, after the meeting, thinking that it would be a great item to, since we'll be updating the hazardous substance tracking instructions anyway, to update that little kind of cheat sheet table. That this is an example of things you don't need to report on.
Just on this memo, it may have been discussed in some of the other, is part of this from the charter or administrative rules of the program?
This is from the appendix, which is kind of question and answer section, as part of the hazardous substance tracking instructions, which go out to businesses that need to report.
Okay, but the idea that research and development is exempted comes from?
Chemicals that are used strictly for research and development, that was designed initially as part of this program, that we would not require research and development.
It's explicitly stated in
Tracking instructions.
the tracking instructions, not necessarily.
The charter is what you're driving at, right?
I guess, or some ordinance or law.
It's not specifically stated in the charter, but the charter did ask the Toxics Board to, or does ask the Toxics Board to provide instructions on how to report. So basically, the rules for reporting are in hazardous substance tracking instructions. The details. So the initial board created that as part of their reporting rules. And the current Toxics Board can discuss changing that if they like.
Well, I don't want to bring it up at this meeting, but in general, I would not see a reason to exempt it, just like say with MSDSs, or maybe they're being renamed. They say any chemical anywhere, we don't care if it's in the bathroom sink of your jet fuel making facility, it's a chemical. And so report everything, like in the fire marshal's report. So research and development versus the actual manufacturing, there were some examples.
Custodial supplies,
Yeah, right, and so a company.
transportation fuel.
Yeah, a company that when you file a fire marshal's report, you have to include everything. And so the use of it to me is not as important as, what it is. And you could look at something like Hanford or Lawrence Livermore Laboratories or OSU's nuclear reactor and say, oh, it's all research, but it doesn't take away from the potential hazard. So I would rather look for a better way to draw the boundaries of what's recordable than the intended use, such as once in a great while or something, rather than what you had in mind, because you could be doing ongoing research and some manufacturing of a product, and I think it deserves reinterpretation at the time when we had that.
I think ideally, yes, this program has a purpose, but there was also a bit of a compromise in the generation of this program to be at least marginally applicable to a manufacturer in the area. And if you're involved at all in an R&D process, in an industrial function, that the quantities are going to be small and they're not going to be continual. The risk is not there.
Yeah.
Unless you're talking explosives. So I would assume in the original generation of the program, that was taken into consideration.
It's no custodial or
Right.
transportation fuel.
I mean, you're nitpicking. When you get down to R&D, you're nitpicking.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
To the point of, yeah,
Unless you want to put a quantity cap on it, because like you said, most of the time it's very small quantities. Your concern is if it is very large quantities. I don't know what kind of research is being done with that large quantities, but you never know.
Sometimes you gotta try 10 times to get one result, and one product is all you need to make,
Well, if you're making product, you then fall under manufacturing. And you
Yeah.
fall under R&D, so you fall under the regular regulations anyway.
Yeah.
and
so the second
Manual
that you
STEM
make.
labs is not the same as STEM production floor.
How many
That might be a better way.
Then you
to-
might go after every lab in
Yeah.
town.
Yeah, no, you don't
Wastewater.
want to,
Right.
you don't want to do it in a lab, but there is, it does leave a loophole, and it has been relevant to some public health issues and things that are research. Maybe we don't have that now, but I would just rather see it tighter. Without having to force people to work small.
Threshold covers that. Threshold limit on the report.
How many people doing research don't report because of that? I mean, do you have more people reporting and more people paying? Do we know that?
I don't know. That would take a lot of time.
It's going to be a scope.
Seems like if they're not manufacturing, then they would fall through the codes.
True.
Okay,
Anyway,
so,
that was, my comment was just, maybe we can consider this in the future, improving the definition to maybe correspond with our intuitive, like we don't want to harass the small amounts in the laboratory to test things, but,
yeah, that point's been made, so,
so, do it later.
okay.
And so I just will remind the Toxics Board, last year, the Toxics Board agreed that we would look at the hazardous substance tracking instructions at least once every 5 years, or if, some reasonable need came up otherwise, either from the public or from a Toxics Board member. So I went to City Council last year for the hazardous substance tracking instructions and chemical list. I'm gonna go again this year. And then, so I'm scheduled to go in October. If we want to do some change like that, we should talk about it soon, because I'm hoping not to have to go for a couple of years.
So you're saying that every 5 years, we should look at this overall package of instructions?
That's what we're voting on.
Okay, and the length of the instructions, since I don't have to fill out the report, is that about 100 pages or something?
79.
I would be interested in hearing from people who do have to fill this out, whether this bill could be abbreviated or whether.
I think we already covered this in the strenuous process that we went through
Okay.
during board to review this last year.
Okay.
Now regarding the question in this meeting, the memo that you sent out, Joe, are we agreeing that we need to table this issue also? Because we've tabled a lot of issues in the past year and our agendas are building up. So are we gonna table this or are we gonna motion to pass this? That's my question to the board.
What's the proposed change here? Sorry, I didn't print things out
What's
this
the
time, 'cause I
action?
printed everything last time. and
The
they were
only,
different.
the only proposed change is in this table here, what is this kind of like quick look, what's reportable and what's not. This was highlighted in the box.
It seems to me that the current program exempts R&D, and I don't see any problem with adding that language now. If we're gonna address that in the future, that doesn't
Great.
stop us from adding these wording now. I don't have any problem with wording as it stands.
So I make a motion to accept the wording instructions that moving on May 16th.
And that's the only change to these?
Yes.
So,
I would second.
Well, that and adding a comment about this to the little cheat sheet table a little bit earlier in the hazardous instructions.
Just so they reflect the same information.
And this point here about one URL to chemical list, that's a separate topic.
Yeah, it's, I've been working with my IT staff just to kind of clean up, the listings that we have to our data and our chemical list. And I've had them combine the chemical list into one, because it was kind of ridiculous that we had to, so.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that. So back to the motion, it's on the table. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Motion carries. And then you want to talk about the website and combining that list, or?
Oh, just about the URL.
Yeah, I don't know if that's required, or is it just, was there an actual change made, or are you asking for a recommendation?
There really wasn't a change made.
Okay.
We just merged the static chemical list and the searchable chemical list into
Okay.
one list.
That's fine.
So,
That
So
seems,
instead of 2 pages, there's one to maintain.
yeah.
seems practical and no worries.
Yeah.
So, I take it we're done with 6, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to 7, toxics program reassessment recommendations. We have 60 minutes, no, we have 49 minutes to talk about it.
Okay, so I am scheduled to meet with the city manager next week, to go through all of these options with him and share the toxic board recommendation on each of the options. And then I'm also scheduled to go to city council, now going to move from September 11th to September 16th, to get their direction on all of these options and whether or not they want all of us, meaning the staff and toxics board, to pursue these options in the upcoming years. And it really basically is to address the serious funding issue we have, based on not having enough businesses in the program to fund the cost of running the program, as well as knowing that there's a few more businesses that are going to be leaving in the next upcoming years. And those are ones that I know about, so there's possibly even more. So it's just kind of time to talk about, how effective is the program being, how can we run it in the future and reduce program costs. And these options were selected by the city manager. So I will open the floor for questions.
I don't have the options
Yeah.
for some reason.
Just read this
I
out.
printed everything out you sent.
So this is
Yeah.
the, this is the memo dated June,
July
July
8th.
July 8th.
I looked for that one. Okay, but it wasn't included as a part of the package.
It was attached to the second to last email Joe sent. So I can summarize the 5 options are as follows. 1, raise the 2,000 state-imposed fee cap. 2, maintain the program as status quo. 3, combine Eugene's program with the Oregon State Fire Marshal's program. 4, reduce the program to only meet requirements of the charter amendment. And 5, eliminate the program.
I can say I absolutely do not support raising the fee as an industrial representative. It's cumbersome. It's an unnecessary cost.
Plus, to do so, we'd have to fight state legally, right?
Yes.
So it's
I mean, it's not
logistically
logical.
a nightmare.
No,
It's complicated.
it
Yeah.
is.
And Joe's memo goes into considerable detail about how complicated that is. So I would tend to concur with that assessment.
I would be curious, but again, highly doubtful of the outcome. Again, it's not logical to combine the state fire marshal in the sense of our data going to theirs. Now, I think it wasn't as clear to me as what you meant by combine. What would we contribute? Anything, or just the program
I think it,
still dissolves, but we defer to state fire marshal?
I mean, I just think it depends how the combination goes. I think it is something the city manager asked me to look into and work on. And it just kind of depends how the conversation goes. Initially, I've had one conversation with the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office, and they're open to talking about it and seeing how we would collaborate. But as far as totally merging both programs, there would need to be a lot of compromises, hopefully on both sides, or one program kind of morphing into the other.
Something huge happened this year with the reporting. The thresholds jumped. They were 5 gallons, 5 pounds, now they're 500. So all the thresholds jump up to 500 pounds, 500 gallons. Totally different equation than what you've been dealing with in the 2.2 pounds. So, good luck. But I'm just saying, in this class, their thresholds were pretty low.
Yeah.
500 gallons now is enormous.
This is the state fire marshal.
State fire
right?
marshal, 500
Yeah.
cubic feet,
Okay.
500 pounds, 500 gallons.
So orders of magnitude difference.
Yeah, so there's no way you're gonna fit them together and say this represents anything close to what you have here.
What about El Rapa?
Totally separate.
Totally.
Yeah, I know that.
State fire marshal also,
We report the same
Yeah.
they also
thing.
had too many errors in their electronic system, and so they've gone to paper reporting again.
Still.
But it
to this
also
day.
has to do with their necessity for what they're doing. From the conversations I've had on the phone with them this year, I don't feel like they have the ability for growth at this point.
The fire marshal's mission is a little bit different than what people are looking for in passing this. The presence of hazards in an emergency situation is why it's under the fire marshal. People wanted this because they didn't want the toxic sport, they didn't want to be subjected to ongoing releases, and we include the balance of where things went as a process. And I don't believe the fire marshal's report does that, at least it didn't when I had to become one. So that's quite a big difference in, as far as ideally, wouldn't it be better? Not really. The fire marshals, people with the toxics, they do want to know about the hazard of an emergency or a fire near them, and it is a benefit. But the main thing is releases on an ongoing basis in a non-emergency situation. I'm about the fee cap. The situation where people who are not engaged in producing any hazard to the public is not something that advocates wanted in this. I think we were looking for the principle of the day, the polluter pays. And this fee cap forced, and it should be according to how much you pollute too. And would be so if I understand, that cap was imposed with the rejection of a quantity-based fee system by a state court.
Well, again, it was another one of the trickle-down effects, really, of the lawsuit.
Well,
And a couple of studies on
it
statewide.
was interpretation of the judge's order in rejecting a fee structure that imposed greater penalties on people who used more of the hazardous and incurred a potential hazard to.
It also had to do with duplication.
Yeah, because.
Duplication of the two reports, which is still
Of the
existing.
reports.
Yeah, so it gets tied in together, it's not separate.
And this came down through legislation, so.
Well, the fee structure was followed.
$2,000 cap.
Yeah, what would do, so that initial decision was followed up with a legislative, a law being passed, a statute
A state law.
law that imposed a fee cap on this program. Well, because the existing fee structure, which charges people who aren't posing a hazard and gives a disproportionate burden to smaller manufacturers, unless you're small enough to be below reportable. I think that it's just as worthy to consider that, or more worthy than to consider, like, say, merging the fire marshal's program or something. I don't see that as beneficial, but I don't think it should be abandoned. We have legislators here, and everybody wants the right to know for the public. And sometimes laws are written that aren't perfect, and so the idea that people should pay according to the potential hazard they present to the public is popular, even if the legislature decides otherwise, and these things can be changed.
So what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that from the list of that it's totally reasonable to think about asking the legislature to reverse that law and to allow for the big manufacturers to make 10 times as much to pay 10 times as much fee as the smaller company that has to pay a fee.
The word pollute that you used, I don't accept.
Well, we aren't
Do
necessarily.
you think we're intentionally polluting?
No, we're
Come on.
not.
Not to interrupt you, but just to get to a certain point, that would be so particular to be able to accomplish what you're getting at. I see what you're getting at. But the reason it was changed to the structure it is now is because what you're asking us to do was what the program logically intended to do, but it mimicked the state fire marshal so closely that we were required to change. So we still will not go back to that. I mean, regardless of what we ask them to do, we can't ask them to consider a fee situation that mimics the state fire marshal.
I'm not sure that was decided on a constitutional basis or
Oregon
something.
Court of Appeals ruling.
Yeah, so it was.
Well, I mean, I've been to the Oregon Court.
So the other,
Well, so are
the other
we-
piece of this is that if you read Joe's memo, you know, practically you're looking at a 2015 legislative session to do
Right.
anything on this issue, so.
Yeah.
That's true,
So far.
yes, but long-term, to me, having, in the time I've served on this, that is a big flaw, and this fee cap, defeating the principle of the, if not the polluter, or something that there's, everything is pollution. You exhale, you pollute, okay? But the
I resent you saying
Okay, well,
that, period.
I'm sorry, but the presentation of a potential risk, okay, is what people should pay in proportion to. And so, this really defeated that whole purpose. And, yes, you're right, in the short term, we can't do it, but on the other hand, combining our program with the state marshals is not a short-term solution either. The fire marshals, not at all.
Can I just throw out a question? I'm curious, and I don't know if I know the answer, but so far, reporting limit is at 2.2 pounds, and now the state fire marshal is at 500 gallons as a,
500 pounds, 500 gallons, 500 cubic feet.
as a minimum reporting. Are we still duplicating? Would it still be considered to be duplicating the fire marshal?
It was a fee structure we were duplicating, not the
Okay.
reporting.
A fee structure duplicating?
And that's one other comment I wanted to remind you of, Randy, that we were ordered not to base our fee on quantity.
I know, yeah, and I know about that order. I'm saying that's more worthy of a challenge, pushback on that, than the idea of combining the fire marshal program and its mission with this one. And I am curious, Andy, is that all chemicals, 500 pounds?
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
Everything goes into the state fire marshal's database.
So when I
Anything-
catalog the dopants in a semiconductor plant, the one, the mustard gas, you know, it's a few pounds, it's so toxic, that's no longer reportable in fire marshal.
The
EHSs may have small
Yeah.
ones, but again, that's the,
The EHS.
EHSs still have
You
their
don't need to have
exceptions.
500 pounds.
Yeah, they always have their exceptions,
Okay.
regardless of regulation. Okay, so that's comments on the first one, on the first option, second option?
Well, I need a recommendation.
On the first one, you want to go one by one?
Yeah.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion?
I was just gonna say, I would support increasing the fee, although I understand the logistical problems in doing that. I certainly think it makes more sense for larger companies to be sharing more of that fee burden rather than putting it on the small businesses.
Joe, can we just back up a little bit? So you're stating that you want a recommendation on each one of these 5 points? I'm not sure that we have enough time. And how are we going to, okay, I'm just kind of asking procedurally. I mean, okay, there's 5 fairly complicated options. Even like eliminating has a lot of complications to it. So I'm a little bit uncertain how we're going to, as a group, make recommendations on each of these.
Okay, well, I mean, recommendations are not required. Just when I went to talk to the city manager, and as well as the city council, which I don't have a very long timeline,
Alright.
I wanted to provide the toxic board with an opportunity to weigh in on each of the options.
Okay,
So you may not necessarily feel comfortable giving me a recommendation, because we probably don't have enough time for everybody to get on the same
right,
page about each option.
right.
But if the toxic board could provide us some consensus comments
Okay,
about each option,
so maybe what.
or maybe it's a bad idea.
Yeah, no, well, what I would suggest is, let me reread the 5 again, and we'll open it kind of to a broader discussion on these 5 topics, and then we could kind of give you some feedback, but I'm not sure how specific that's going to be my thinking. 'Cause I mean, we could belabor any of these points for 2 hours and not get anywhere. So let's just try to throw them all 5 out there, and people make general comments about, you know, what they think from the different sides on all 5, and then we can kind of piece it together from there, okay? So the first was this issue of raising the 2000 state-imposed fee cap. There's all kinds of complications there in terms of long-term legislative action. It's not a simple process. It went to this appeals court before, et cetera, et cetera. Maintain this program as the status quo. Combining this program with the Oregon State Fire Marshal, there's already been some discussion about that they're not duplicative. There's different reporting criteria levels in terms of volumes. And then reduce the program to meet only requirements of the charter amendment, which is something that we've discussed previously at meetings in terms of directing Joe's time. And then 5, eliminating the program. I was just going to, okay, so those are the 5, and this is my individual comment. Maintaining the program as status quo. That's where the rub to me comes from, is that we have a program that has a small, a set budget that's pretty much just driven by salaries and IT overhead. Even if we eliminated the IT portion of it, salary is a big portion of it. So I see complications with the status quo. Eliminating the program, my impression coming into this program is very different than my impression after having been on this board for several years. And the majority of what I've seen us do is basically talk about raising, you know, setting the fee structure. And part of what, okay, so my kind of scientist side wants to say, well, what's the data? I mean, I hear industry saying often that this is duplicative reporting. And then I hear advocates say that it's not duplicative, that this is essential. I know that the history of the program was really directed at, what's the semiconductor that left town? At Hynix. So the real impetus for this program was Hynix and people concerned about how much toxics Hynix was going to be pushing into our community. Okay, Hynix is gone. That's that major contribution into toxic discharge is gone, okay? So from my perspective, I almost think that we need to collect information, and maybe this needs to have the advocates do one side of it and industry do the other side of it. A comparison, is this program really duplicative? And if it's duplicative, as a neutral person, as a scientist, I would say, why are we doing it if it's duplicative? And you're never going to convince anyone in the community on either side that we should stop doing this program unless we collect that data. So that's kind of my piece in terms of a lot of these different options. So I just throw that out, and maybe we can have a broader discussion about these different options.
I think that's an interesting suggestion to gather information about, you know, what aspects are potentially duplicative. And it's both, I mean, we have to look at both the reporting side and any duplicativeness there, and then also the right to know side, I mean, the availability of this information, because even if some of it is being reported, it's not necessarily available to everyone.
I'm really interested in looking at how to roll together the 2 reports and where are the similarities between the State Fire Marshal report and what we're trying to do with the Toxics Act, and how different are the differences. And if there's a lot of duplicate, I can't say that word,
There's a lot of duplication going on
I
there.
think you need to use more than just the fire marshal.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
need
it
to
would-
use the other agencies to
Mhm.
report to and determine how close they are, because they
Right.
are very close.
A lot
I
of
can
them
tell
are
you that.
very close, and, you know, maybe it makes more sense for us to work with the EPA or another state agency, as long as the right to know portion can be addressed as well in some way or
I think we're
another.
the only city in the United States that has a toxic right to know.
No.
No?
Oh, a board, maybe a board, but not an act.
No.
There are lots of toxic rights to know acts out there, and so another interesting thing would be to look at how those are run.
And Rick, from the industry side, I think it's really easy to say, well, we report all this. I mean, it's a generalization, but you'll never answer the questions of people on the advocacy side by just saying, we already do that. Because you have to have a specific
I will
comparison.
agree that they may not have a direct line,
Mhm.
but we are reporting
Yeah, there's
every
the,
day.
yeah, the
Yeah, I
reporting is being
understand
done,
that.
so
Period.
how do we see if we can combine some of that reporting with the other side of it to get the information out there? How are other cities and other states doing it? Because there are states that have statewide right to know acts.
Yeah,
So
unless
how
we
are
do
they handling
unless
that?
we do a comparison, it's a never-ending,
Mhm.
back and forth discussion, and do you get anywhere at the end of the day?
We just opened up a complete fab
Excuse me?
facility in
Comparison of
Ruston,
what?
Louisiana.
Mhm.
Comparison
I'd
of
be
what?
glad to give you the comparison.
Comparison.
A comparison of what's being reported where is what we're requiring manufacturers to report in this program different, or is it basically the same thing being reported in a different format?
And the other side of it being made public.
Well, the fact that the city is, one of maybe the only or a tiny handful that have its own law is something that the people who put it in are proud of, because even though it's now sometime in the past, this idea of the right to know is part of an environmental accomplishment that follows on failures by the upper agencies.
I have no problem with the right to know
Yeah,
whatsoever.
I mean, starting, in the 70s, people said, well, we have an agency that's supposed to stop pollution or, anti-poisoning or whatever, and it's not working, the federal government, or even state agencies. How well does West Virginia do on controlling some of their pollution, or Louisiana? Is that people have seen this, and so there is this distrust, and there still is some well-founded skepticism of things at a higher level. So that's why this came in, and it'll take a while before people believe just anything that comes out of the center. Now, as far as lowering the cost and eliminating the duplication, I think I've been curious. I asked, well, how many pages is that report? How long does it take? I'm kind of, the Chamber of Commerce has taken an interest in this. I think an economic study, kind of a report summarizing the cost to a business to file this, put it in context. We have a regulatory person, the EPA's report takes this much, something that was reasonably authoritative. They gave us an idea of what the cost of it. Now, the benefits of the program, on the environmental advocate side, we're getting pretty good at listing all the things. If you added up the cost of all the asthma for people subjected to certain types of air pollution, that might be concerned with, these are externalities and often forgotten, but we're getting better at listing that. But we still like to show the most benefit, or potential benefit in lowering those costs, for as low a cost as possible to the person who has to make the report. And it would help to have some idea of what we're talking about for a business, whether it's a business of 10 people or 100 or
Your
1,000.
$2,000 that we pay, or whatever it is,
Well, I think
is a
I mean,
small portion of what ask Andy.
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
pay him.
Yeah, the cost, yeah, what
cost.
cost,
Andy's
yeah.
leaving.
Yeah, and not all businesses have the same, but I mean, it's, what are we talking about? If you come up and say, well, $50,000 per business, don't think that that's gonna make everybody say, we gotta junk that program, because we're gonna come back and say, there's millions of dollars of property values, so you know, I mean, I've gone door to door next to Baxter, which unfortunately isn't regulated, but the property values of a place that has toxics in the air, look, that's just one, the human health consequences.
Fortunately, the water level in Baxter, from our, we border Baxter. We're.
Okay.
And the Baxter's here, we're here, and the water table flows this way.
Okay.
We've had a test.
All right. Well, anyway, so we're getting, the environmental advocates are getting better at finding all these externalities to show that the benefit or the potential benefits. But that doesn't mean that we still want to increase the costs. We would still like to see, if it costs the business $30,000, we'd rather have it $20,000.
I think the concern here is bringing a smaller business into Eugene. And every little cost that they see is a problem. It's not, you know, I can afford it.
And then that was,
But that's what they're looking at.
Yeah.
And why do you think they're moving from, why do you think Eugene went from Eugene to Junction City?
yeah, but
I mean, come on.
oh, well, I don't know. I mean,
I know why.
Yeah.
I know them.
I also, I worked a few days there and it was kind of smelly, but the reason that the advocates put in a minimum that not everybody had to pay, you had to have so many employees, is because they didn't want to hurt the small business, and they didn't have a cap that larger businesses would, you know, be exempt from going over a $2,000 payment. So that's the thing. I would appreciate more dollar and cents of the staff time involved for different sizes of business and how any changes. I mean, we can't have that on every single change we propose, but I don't have such a good idea of where economies could be made to lessen the impact, especially on the smaller businesses.
I would certainly support eliminating duplication, if that's something we can do. I know that it's kind of a regulatory morass, but
I'm gonna have a tough time.
if we could navigate through that and eliminate duplications, we would have no reason not to, I think.
You know, look at El Rapa. Now, I may be wrong here, but I know we're one of the very few counties in the state that have a program like that. And the businesses got together to get that program to start with. I did a little research on it, and I report in every day. I have a paint, and we're trying to reduce our paint, of course, because it's just too costly. And you got all these different colors and all these things that go on, but we get it from Rada, we get it from Force Paint, and we mark it down every day. And it's a rolling monthly report, not a yearly report, because they want to make sure that if you report it for a year and you had this amount, well, then they couldn't tell when that, you can explain it better than I can, probably, but when that large amount happened, so you report it every single month. But just, you know, we do it. And every single thing that goes into that paint is, Sheila, hell, she's got people working for her. Right? We have Andy working for us, and we have different managers in our company reporting that to my purchasing agent who puts it together.
And that's just hitting to the duplication is, you know, you've got LRAP, you've got DEQ, you've got EPA, you've got Fire Marshal, and a few others, you know, and the data is all very similar that they're asking for, but they have different thresholds perhaps, or different cutoffs,
Yeah.
et cetera, different timelines, they're all due at a different time of year, and slightly different criteria. So any chance, like you said, to get rid of that duplication is nice, especially if it can address the right to know side of it. And if, you know, if we can work that out with the fire marshal or, you know, DEQ or whoever, so that all we had to work on was maybe putting together a plan to address the right to know and make sure that, you know, the reporting criteria was meeting the expectations of the toxics board, I think that would be beneficial to everybody.
I would think I know the EPA is interested in this program just because of its sort of uniqueness. our new member, why am I blanking? Lisa Arkin, has talked about how they've been able to get grants from the EPA in part because of the data that's available through the Tox Explorer website. And so, you know, maybe the EPA would be interested in looking at coastal electrification.
It almost seems like there's a logical conflict of interest or separation of interest in that. How about the industry members of this board come up with a list of where they think duplication is, and the advocate side come up where you think there would be holes if you eliminated the program? Because
Holes in the reporting.
yeah, or holes where if the toxic reporting went away, then you wouldn't have this data. Okay, because I mean, it would seem like you guys have the data to show I'm reporting this same chemical to these 4 different organizations. And it would seem like a logical argument that shows that you're doing this in duplication would be in your own best interest. And likewise, for the advocates to say, well, if we stop the toxics program, then we're going to have these holes here. That seems to me to be the kind of the crux of this issue as to whether or not what we're doing is just pushing numbers around on pieces of papers and on a website, or whether or not we're actually doing what the intention of this charter was from the beginning.
I think that would be very valuable for us to do. And
I recommend that
something we
Wendy
would
and
do,
Sheehan
not so
of
much
the
Joe.
industrial group get together and bring up this.
I would agree that that's a very logical step.
Yeah, that's a
I
good
also,
one,
I also
Stephen. I
look
like
at
that.
what Joe has in front of her with this meeting. Obviously, she said that we don't need to make a recommendation.
Yeah.
But just me keeping that in mind, just throwing some thoughts out here, that we've got a few things in here that are long-term solutions that you're looking at, and then really only one that's a short-term solution. And we've all been through the financial figures. I mean, Joe's put them out in Excel spreadsheets that says if we keep going at this rate, even if I take out this duty, which costs me approximately this much, and inflation and this and that, blah, 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 this is where we're gonna fall short. We've all seen that. Several meetings.
In
For the last 2
reality, do
years.
you think that you're ever going to get rid of this program? I mean, we need to come up with a way
Right,
to make it work.
And that's, even if we were looking at that as something that if city council decided to take that to public vote and it was a good allotment of our resources, as a city, to look at something like that, even if we thought, the public would say, maybe we don't need this. Even still, that's a long-term solution, because that's not gonna happen overnight either.
No.
Honestly, about the only thing that we've got in here that we could consider now is, at the time, bringing the program down to status quo until the board can give you more support doing these comparisons of duplications or the holes in the programs, the holes in the data, until we can give you enough data to move out of status quo.
But
That's what it seems like.
didn't we really already choose option 4? Reduce the program to only meet requirements of the charter amendment. When we made the fee recommendation that was at the lower level, well, maybe I'm misunderstanding that. I mean, we basically made a recommendation that we were going to support.
A reduced budget.
Yeah.
But then, the city manager and fire chief asked for a revision on that.
And we come back and we approved it higher.
Moved up to 90%.
Okay, all right, so no, we approved it at the 90%.
Yes.
So that's somewhere between status quo and the minimum.
Why did the city manager come back? I had the telephone conversation with you and I didn't quite understand why they came back and recommended that.
Well, because the work plan included enough work that was gonna keep me busy for at least 90% of my time. And my work needs to be paid for out of this program. And again, like Stephen said, the biggest chunk is salary and benefits of managing the program. So, and just kind of the timeline for this is that in October, the topic board is gonna start talking about next year's fee, And we need to have a decision on that by the end of January, early February. So we really need to, these are not the only options, these are just the options that the city manager asked us to look into. But we do need to talk about what can we do with the program in future years, given this funding issue.
See, you're right on that, what you're getting at there is we're pretty close to status quo with what we whittled it down to in the last year.
Yeah, so even with that
You know.
10%, we're pretty much talking about status quo.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a bit more of just saying this is what we're gonna do for now. And
Right.
we as a board add more support, lend more support than we have in the past, of actually doing some footwork ourselves.
Not all, but most of those, like combining with fire marshal, so those involve changes to the charter. You couldn't do that without rewriting the charter, and that requires, does it require a vote of the people? Okay. Question, and then I have the suggestion of where to go on that. Where does it say that we have to be entirely fee supported?
In the charter.
It's in the charter.
It says that no money can support the program from anywhere else.
Correct.
Well, all right. A lot of things we're discussing, I would, I think the way that it's defined as applying to manufacturers and so on, I would put some from fees that proportional to the potential risk and the reason for monitoring. I would match it with I think the city has a gas tax, which is a bunch of toxic pollution spewed by all of us into the air. And I'll bet you that a tiny fraction of what we collect in gas taxes for the city of Eugene would cover all of the problems financially.
But you're
Gas
bouncing up
stations.
against the charter. That's,
Gas tax, doesn't the city impose a gasoline tax of its own in addition to federal and state taxes? City of Eugene?
I don't know.
I think they do.
yeah, there is a,
And I bet you that the amount of money collected, and I bet you, and I believe it is not dedicated as a state gas tax is to road improvements only. But I think that people would understand for the relatively small amount, and if it was matched, partially by fees of people who are using this category of toxic chemicals, that their own toxic chemicals that they use, so because you drive an electric vehicle, you're not gonna pay that. You get double the mileage, you pay half of what the person with the big car. So we already have a tax on a toxic that is consumed, and it seems to me that I'd like to know the total amount the city collects. It probably goes to road funds. The city has done a poor job of dedicating its funds. I don't know if you're aware that you pay for computer or internet stuff, a tax, which is supposed to be dedicated, and it really isn't, in my view. But I think the money, the total program, we're talking about $400,000, right?
Yes, about 120.
120, yeah, and I think the revenue is there. Of course, you don't want to just assign unlimited revenue, is what people will not vote for, and so that's my long-term, if we're talking about charter amendments as these are, I would find a way to link it into an existing funds that are collected on the use of the toxic substance.
One thing we've done to try and generate more revenue is to look and see what businesses should be reporting that haven't been because there was no system for identifying businesses, new businesses or whatever, who should be reporting. And I know you found some, so that was one thing we have done to try and increase the revenue. Another thing is it, so the charter says manufacturing businesses will report. And then we decided, the board has decided that manufacturing businesses are the ones with the, I don't know the name of the code.
The SIC code.
The SIC
The
code.
Standard Industrial
Okay,
Classification.
and that, they fall within a certain range. Is it possible, are there other businesses that would meet the definition of manufacturing, but do not have those SIC codes? I don't know.
Well, that's defined in the charter also, so if we were to change that, that would also be a charter.
So the charter, using the SIC codes is also perfect.
But it's not from the court decision.
And a number, a lot of previous toxics boards have spent a lot of time looking into what it would take, working with the attorney, what would it take to expand into other industries like gas stations. And it just, the effort for it would not really bring in a large enough amount of revenue to justify the cost.
So I was wondering if that could be done without a charter event. That sounds like, no. All right.
So, you know, part of what I'm hearing is that most of these 5 options are long-term and they're complicated. We could develop some more information about the utility of the program, and that might go into an assessment of whether or not the program needs to continue. But most of these are all long-term, and I don't hear anything coming out of this discussion that has a short-term solution beyond what we've already kind of penciled out for continuing at the status quo. Does anybody think kind of off base in that summarization?
I wouldn't see any short term.
Okay, so maybe we can leave it kind of at that level of discussion, and that's the feedback you get from the board. I know that's fairly vague, but that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I would be curious if the majority of the board would be in agreement to kind of doing a gap analysis study. The industry reps working on the industry side and the advocacy reps working on the advocacy side, just to really do an in-depth analysis of the program. Or we're not ready to.
Like Stephen's suggestion, or?
I'm wondering if some of these questions, you know, if we can find some free help, like from law school or public policy and management, like is, you know, I'm saying, well, people have good reason not to trust federal regulatory agencies. Well, maybe it's not as bad as it used to be. You know?
Well, maybe like an internship for a law student.
Yeah, well, or they can assign papers in a class on particular parts of our problem, you know? Like, and some of these as general policy issues, they consider at 3 p.m. You know, the incentive becomes this, if you make the law, you know, Carl Hostica teach there, you know, which way does it drive things.
So are you volunteering to round up some
Network,
of that
some
free
people.
I
It's a-
make a motion that Randy rounds up.
Second, all opposed?
Well, I don't have any real connections there, well, I mean,
I think Lisa.
yeah,
has
you
a
might-
vision for this
that's right.
question, so,
Yeah.
when she's here.
And
What-
beyond interns, every program I think at the U of O has a requirement for graduation that students do some sort of independent project.
Mhm.
And so you could easily go to the law school, you could easily go to the environmental studies and sciences schools, et cetera, and propose that they ask their students to do these projects. The one thing I will say is they work on schedules, and so you get it in that 3-month time period and you get whatever they pull together. And we've done this actually at Life Technologies, had a student class come out, and there was a student group that helped us with one of our projects. And you know, what your standards are and what
Yeah,
the
it's-
student standards are, there's usually a big gap there, but
You're never
it-
gonna have a fully professional,
right,
these are kids. they're
you
not-
might get some helpful information out
Yeah,
of it.
exactly. Well, I would suggest that we
Lewis and
put,
Clark also is an environmental program. So-
I would suggest that we put a discussion of a gap analysis on the table for future agendas, because I think it's practical, it would, you know, it has a piece for both sides of the table, and it really goes to the heart of what are we doing here. So I think that's appropriate. And how we get that done and how we approach it. And Lisa, I think I agree with Christine that she would be a key person to include in that. And if EPA really is interested in this kind of a program and where there's noise that we might cut it, then maybe they would kick in some funds to have an environmental consultant pick this up and look at it, do a serious analysis of it. So that to me, that would be valuable, because I have, having been here, I have questions about what we're really accomplishing. So I think we can leave it at that today. So
Okay.
cool.
So what I'm gonna add, so basically I'm sending this very memo to the city council that I sent to you. And I'll add in as a result of toxics board discussion, the toxics board believes that all of these options listed are long-term and complicated. And they discussed as a group to discuss a gap analysis in the future.
I don't like the word complicated. How about not?
Complex.
No, complex, that's better, yes. Positive.
Convoluted, how's that?
No. Complex is like, oh, that's great.
All right, I'll change it.
Got some complexity, but complicated is a negative.
Do you want to try to set a date for our next meeting?
And I think I'll also add that, reiterate that in general, the toxics board supports looking for areas to eliminate duplication.
Yeah, I think we all concur on that.
And I apologize on hazardous substance tracking instructions. I just wanted to confirm that no one on the board had an issue with me updating the language to say SDS instead of MSDS on the global harmonization initiative.
That's just the UN's been working on this for dozens of years. It's just a way to standardize language throughout the world so that customers in one country can talk to their suppliers in another country, and when they ask for an MSDS, it's all just gonna be a safety data sheet now, not a material safety data sheet.
I actually saw this on a document I looked at yesterday, and
You'll
I thought,
see
why
this.
did it change?
Because actually what happened is the EU and Japan and a lot of APAC has been doing this for years.
Right.
OSHA just adopted it this last year and is implementing it at the end of this year. So all the companies in the US
That's
this
just
year
so
are
funny,
going
'cause
through
I
all the
just saw it
training
for
and
the first
changes
time.
this year.
Yeah, so everybody's gonna have their general training for all their employees on how to read the new SDSs by the end of this
December 1st.
year. And then it's 2015 that your SDSs will have to comply, it's 2016 that your labels will have to comply, is that correct? But
Yep.
the fun part of that is that the US adopted Rev 3, the UN just released Rev 4. They're
Yeah.
close to Rev 5, and every other country has adopted any Rev they want and any part they want
Any
out
part
of
they
it.
want. It's
So it's
true.
really not global harmonization.
It really isn't. Really what you'll go by is it's an SDS.
Perfect.
And
there
the
are more
labels.
pictures.
Was that, and
There
the
are more pictures.
Yeah, the pictures are colorful.
The
So.
format is changed?
The format is, well, see, the funny thing is the US didn't really have much nailed down for formatting. We didn't really have a regulated format. This does have a regulated format. It will be 16 sections.
What was used, like 13 or 12 now?
There was
different.
there was an ANSI recommendation, but OSHA did not have a regulated format before. So depending on which company you looked at, you saw something different. Now they'll be standardized.
Somewhat similar, but yeah.
Hopefully somewhat similar.
Yeah.
but
Okay, so how about a date? When do you need us to meet again, Joe?
Okay, so first can we answer my question?
Yeah.
Yes.
And yes,
No problem.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't think we need to meet until, let's say early November. I'm gonna be out most of October, training, and I'm gonna take vacation. And then
Vacation? What's that?
Was that approved?
Yes. And then I have the city council meetings for the hazardous substance tracking instructions and the chemical list change at the end of the month, so I'll be able to report on those.
Okay,
So-
first week in November is totally out for me. Second week's open. Third week is open. Fourth week is Thanksgiving, so forget it.
Okay, so we go to December then.
Well, no, second or third week of November is open for me. Anybody else? That's the week of the 11th or the 18th.
Second week works for me, I think.
Yeah, that would be-
That works for me.
I'm gonna be in Louisiana the week of the 5th.
How
I know
about
that.
Wednesday the 13th?
Ooh, not the 13th.
Wife's birthday?
No, 13th.
Oh, the 13th. It's not Friday, it's
I
Wednesday.
have a CFO that will not sit in a seat in a plane if it's on road 13, he will not fly on the 13th. And we went on a trip, I thought he was full of it, but I made a believer of me after this trip was over.
This is a tangent, isn't it, Rich?
Huh?
This is a tangent, isn't it?
Yeah,
What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, we're talking about.
it's a
Okay.
rabbit trail.
How about Thursday the 14th?
There you go.
Does that work?
Yep.
3:30, same bat channel, same bat time.
Thursday, November.
You can put that in the minutes.
14th.
Same bat channel.
And by then, I'll try to bring some information as far as reporting duplications and
Yeah, I think
differences
if,
and similarities.
just do a
at
sniff
least
test,
from our
I
end.
think.
Why
not-
don't,
Maybe
Yeah,
just
why
some
don't
basics.
both you guys do
so-
that? I can do it too, also.
I think, well,
I got a guy that
I
can,
was thinking it'll be a little different.
they can tell me exactly who
Just bring our own
reports who, he's got a
perspective.
list.
Yeah, I think we start with just some quick looks at it, and then we can kind of formulate our own thoughts about where are the holes, and then maybe we can find someone to, I think it'd be.
I don't
good-
know
Yeah.
what what your business is exactly. I was here, but I don't remember. But I know Willamette Valley very well. And,
I report for both sides, Willamette Valley Eclectic Products, which are two entirely different companies. Eclectic Products is adhesives, you know, we're not based in the state of Oregon, they're based in Louisiana. I mean, so we're under some pretty heavy regulation.
yeah.
So it's kind of two different tiers, you know, of our requirements, so we can, let's together some basic stuff to
Yeah,
see.
and we're a life sciences company, so we deal with all sorts of chemicals on the chemical side as well as some things that fall under biology.
So what is your product, or what do you do?
Oh, what we make actually research agents for use primarily in research laboratories. So people doing cancer research or glaucoma research or diabetes research, we basically make the tools that they use to do their research. And here in Eugene, we focus on molecular dyes. So it's like a spray paint that fluoresces under fluorescent light that they can attach to whatever experiment they're doing and put it under a microscope and actually see what they're doing, as opposed to kind of guessing, well, it looked like this in the beginning and this in the end, and we'll have to guess what happened in the middle.
They basically make tools for microbiology
Yeah.
research. So, okay, good. I thought we kind of did good steering through a complex set of discussions.
great.
Cool, all right. Anything else?
Nope.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.